In this age of automation that we're living in today, we could use a new religion that would suit our modern ways. Since we don't believe in heaven and we don't believe in hell, there's a mechanized religion that would suit us very well. Oh, dear computer, we adore thee. Burdens are lifted by IBM. Oh, we traded in our pastor for a robot, and we're glad, because he's the finest minister our church has ever had. He can't preach the finest sermons, but he's always through by 12. And he surely can take orders, so he suits us very well. Now our sinful, careless members make our ministries seem hard when they spindle, fold, and mutilate their prayer confession cards. And their sins, when thus distorted, seem so evil and unkind that we've got a church computer with an awfully dirty mind. Oh, dear computer, this is a recording. Praise the transistors and wires, amen. Dear computer, I beseech thee, this is number 503. I've been burdened with my sinfulness, oh, won't you counsel me? I've been guilty of transgression, number 14905. If you'll program some forgiveness, it will surely satisfy. Oh, dear computer, we adore thee. Burdens are lifted by IBM. It's easy to get trapped into a feeling of organizational machinery in doing anything, whether it's church or business or whatever phase of life you're talking about. But there are some people who I don't think will ever get trapped into this feeling. This is the person who has this attitude. I got my opinions from generations back, so please don't confuse me by giving me the facts. I have all my prejudices neatly arranged, so don't try to teach me, I never will change. I've made up my mind and I never will change. Since I was a lad, I've carefully tried to live with propriety, dignity, and pride. To new innovations, I'm really not blind. I simply ignore them, I've made up my mind. I simply ignore them, I've made up my mind. When I hear a new idea, I don't get sore, 'cause I've probably heard of it somewhere before. But still I will stash it away on the shelf. If it had been any good, I'd have thought of it myself. If it had been any good, I'd have thought of it myself. From hidebound tradition, we'll never be free. If it was good enough for Moses, it's good enough for me. These 7 last words will tell you the score. We never did it that way before. No, we never did it that way before. Now, one thing that I want to say at this time is I'm an ordained minister. I don't know, a lot of you may not believe that. I'm sure many of you didn't realize it, but it's true. My problem is I'm ordained and I can't preach. Now, I don't apologize for that. I don't apologize for that because I'm not the only one in that category. There are lots of guys around, but I got to be ordained because it was the thing to do. I was on the staff of a church, and somebody felt like we ought to be ordained. And I was working as a music and youth director, and I'd been there 18 months, and that's longer than anybody else had ever lasted in that title. So I held the record for seniority. And I was walking by a bunch of the brethren one Sunday morning. They were out sending up burnt offerings before Sunday school. And I walked by and heard somebody say, "He's still here." Now, I don't know if you have any insecurity in your job or not, but that fouled up my Sunday, I'll guarantee you. I didn't sleep a wink that morning. I went through an awful day. it was decided by these fellas that they ought to do something to commemorate the fact that I'd been there longer than anybody else ever had. Now, when I heard that, I thought to myself, they're going to give me a raise. That was my thought on the matter. Their thought on the matter was that they were going to change my title to something that sounded more ministerial than music and youth director. So when I heard that, I wanted to be associate pastor, because when you're associate pastor, you get to associate with the pastor, and that's supposed to be a big deal for some reason. I'll never know, because they made me assistant pastor, and my main responsibility then was to preach when the preacher was gone. And since I can't, I had to anyway, so I went around asking a whole lot of preachers, how do you get ready to preach? And I figured something has to happen between Sunday school and church that I don't know about, because it never happened to me. And I went around asking preachers, how do you prepare between Sunday school and church? And this is the answer. It's the most disappointing thing that I've ever heard in my life. Sitting in the study, watching all the folks go home. Sunday school is over, that's the time they start to roam. Brother, if you've got a rich imagination, try to decide where they might go. But I'll be sitting in the study, watching all the girls, watching all the boys and their moms and dads go home. Sunday morning at 9:30, the parking lot was looking fine. Then I noticed with despair that several boats and motors were resting on their trailers, staring at me there. Sitting in the study fills your heart with grief and pain. Watching people leaving makes you want to pray for rain. So if you've got a practical suggestion, write me a note, or better yet, phone, and I will use it in a sermon Easter Sunday morning when I preach to those who arose every other week after Sunday school and went home. When you're the kind of minister that I am, you're bound to have problems no matter what. In our church, for instance, we had a membership drive a couple of months ago, and we drove off 37. Then at 1 month, we had a lot more on the prospect list. And so, but as I say, it's easy to get in a rut. Now, for instance, I know this one pastor last summer got a greeting card, and it was kind of disconcerting to him because it read this way: "This is really some vacation. Pastor, you could hardly believe all the sins that we've committed. It sure did us good to leave. We've been living wild and reckless, and there's plenty more to come. I'm sure glad that you don't know which of your members this is from." Well, there are certain things that cause you to feel like you're in a rut or in a machine. I mean, dear computer, we adore thee may never happen, but we live it out in a personified way sometimes. I know I've been in the ministry 12 years, and people say, yeah, 12 years experience. And I say, no, 1 year's experience 12 times. We meet ourselves coming back every year. So I decided to analyze a few situations which really get to the average minister, I think. Whispering in the worship service. Whispering makes the pastor nervous. Whispering is a vice of teenage and in between age too. Old people whisper to each other. Tiny tots whisper to their mother. Some do not whisper cause they'd druther. Write a note and pass it down. Don't shave your sideburns, pastor. Let your hair get longer too. You'll look like Charlton Heston if you do. Then read the 10 Commandments. Raise your voice a lot. We'll pay attention when you tell us thou shalt not. Now, there's one instance that I was going to tell you about. In our church, I had written a WMU song, Women's Missionary Union. I had written up in song, and they were so happy. Now, our Brotherhood man came to me and said, if they get a song, we get a song. Now, you have to understand our Brotherhood to understand this, but I said it's hard to criticize an organization that doesn't do anything. And anyway, he said, no, come on now, we want a song to sing in our meetings about what we do. I said, that I can accomplish, but I can't give you more space than I think you deserve. He said, all right, as long as we have a song to sing in our meetings. So this is it. Bring your brother to Brotherhood. We're sure gonna feed him good. We've got a menu to satisfy everyone. other organizations that you can devote more space to. For instance, there's one attitude that I find all over our community, and I go out and I talk with people and I say, no, why don't you attend our church? And they say, well, there's a situation that exists there that you may not be aware of. And so then they tell me something like this. There's a little group that runs the church, you know. They got me to join, although I never go. They send me a copy of the church report. I send them an offering as a last resort. They can have a tent crusade or say a prayer. They can fire the choir director, I don't care. They can run their business without asking me. They'll never get me involved. They can pave the parking lot or buy a bus. They can paint the nursery and I won't fuss. They can spend their money any way they plan. They can send a doctor to a foreign land. They can call a pastor without asking me. They can buy a carpet for the library. They can run their business without my control. I'm just a name on the roll. Thank you very much. You know, now, all of these things that we've said point up the fact that many people have missed the idea of what church is all about. That actually being a Christian is something different from belonging to an organization, that we actually do have a spiritual vitality that is not evidently evident in some people's lives. I tried to put together a song which would state something of the feeling of certain people in our society today. Thou shalt have no other gods before him. Thou shalt live by faith and not in doubt. But these are subject to interpretation. Let's keep the words and throw the meaning out. Like thou shalt not steal, except in the case of emergency, and thou shalt not kill, except in the case of war. This is an immorality, it's breaking down formality, and it can keep you living by the word of the Lord. Now you've heard about religions that are sad and slow, and there's a lot of doctrine that you need to know. But what I'm pushing is a brand new key. Believe what you want and call it sincerity. Now some take the 10 Commandments at their word, but in my new religion they are never heard. We have just one commandment and we know it's true. Do unto others for they do it to you. Sincerity, that's all that matters. Sincerity, just take my advice. Sincerity, it makes you feel better. The cost of it is nothing and it's worth the price. Love thy neighbor as thyself and try to live by the teachings of the Holy Word. But if you have to compromise, don't worry. Just close your eyes and pretend you've never heard that thou shalt not steal, except in the case of emergency, and thou shalt not kill, except in the case of war. This is a new morality. It's breaking down formality, and it can keep you living by the word of the Lord. Now, there's one thing that Paul calls to our attention in the book of Philippians, that we cannot maintain the spiritual vitality that we need without a contact with God. And this is what would make a church feel like a machine. It would make the church feel like simply an organization if we lost this contact with our Savior. And so therefore we've been provided an outlet, an opening by which we can speak with God, in which God can speak to us. And so I want to sing about this. It's an exciting feeling to know that whenever we need Him, God is already there and already knows our needs and is ready to meet those needs and to help us solve our problems. In God we trust is our motto. One nation under God is our name. So help me, God is our pledge to the truth. But are we in truth what we claim? We say God bless America, the home of the brave and the free. But did you remember to thank Him for His blessings to you and to me? We say God gave His grace to us in a life more abundant each day. But did you remember to thank Him? Did you remember to pray? We have freedom to meet for our worship. We're a God-fearing nation, they say. We subscribe to our favorite charity, 'cause that's the American way. We say God bless America, the home of the brave and the free. But did you remember to thank Him for His blessings to you and to me? We say God gave His grace to us in a life more abundant each day. But did you remember to thank Him? Did you remember to pray? College song about college, not as it really is, but as it appears on the afternoon news. Now, when I went to college, I wondered what I'd be. I majored in mathematics, pursuing my degree. But then I learned some new ideas, and I believed them all. They were written on the plaster of the dormitory hall. Oh, listen to our singing, go marching with our band. We're shouting and we're smoking cigarettes that have no brand. Our parents send us money, we get it in the mail, enough to pay tuition and to bail us out of jail. An angry student told me that he'd give me a chance to exercise my faith in civil disobedience. We'll stage a lot of protests, go marching every night, and we won't wash and shave until they grant our civil rights. Don't blame it on pollution or the war in Vietnam. Don't blame it on the president or on our dads and moms. Although I'm just a freshman, I'm smart enough to know that we're rebelling just to see how far they'll let us go. So listen to our singing, go marching with our band. Just read our picket signs if you are wondering where we stand. Then listen to our speeches, four-letter words of praise. And this is what we call an education nowadays. One of the things that I've noticed as you look around you and you see the news and you see the world situation, a Christian just has to get involved. You can't sit back and say, well, it doesn't involve me because I'm a member of the church and therefore I have a separate set of interests. For one thing, it's like a town that I know of in Texas that has an entrance to it in which you go down a big steep hill, and as you reach the bottom of the hill, you have to negotiate a rather sharp turn to the right. And if you don't, you go off into a deep ditch, and it's a rather ineffective way to enter the town, let me put it that way. And so one fellow came driving into the town and pulled into a service station, and he said, that's the most awful turn and hill and everything in the road that you can imagine. Why don't you put up a sign? And the fellow said, well, we had a sign up for 2 years and nobody ran off, so we took it down. Now, I think maybe this is something of the feeling that a lot of people get about life as it is. For instance, I've been looking at the public schools. If you look at the public schools, you find a lot of disharmony there, so I thought I would add some of my disharmony to their disharmony and see what we come up with. As I walked out in the hall of the schoolhouse, I spied a young boy, or perhaps 'twas a girl. He wore skin-tight Levi's and hair to his shoulders, and I was impressed by his beautiful curls. I saw by his outfit that he was a hippie. I know this 'cause I watch the news every day. He saw by my outlook that I was a bigot, and therefore we had very little to say. But at least we have cooperation in our plans for integration. But we've hit one snag that's fundamental. We have our whites and blacks and browns, but we've been searching all around, and we can't find our share of Orientals. So there is just one answer, and it's this: go and bust some in from San Francisco. Then our percentages will be in style, and HEW will smile, and we will keep receiving all our dough from Uncle Sam. That's federal aid, federal aid. We could not exist without federal aid, and so every order is strictly obeyed, so we'll keep receiving our federal aid. The school board announced a new school busing plan to integrate classrooms all over the land. We asked, why is this kind of policy made? So we'll keep receiving our federal aid. Federal aid, federal aid. We'd have to close up without federal aid, and so every order is strictly obeyed. So we'll keep receiving our federal aid. Now, education is important in the life of a minister, too. A lot of people ask me, for instance, how do you get to be what you are? And I figure by that they mean a minister. Now, that must not be what they mean, because I tell them you have to go to college, and this always gets a big laugh, which is kind of disconcerting to a sensitive personality like mine. But I tell them, because it's true. I went to college because, let me explain this. I went to college in a small town, and we had limited cultural environment. Let me put it this way. We had, for instance, no television. And it's funny because there was TV sets all over the world, and there were TV sets in our town that just wasn't any reception. That was the only area lacking in our TV enjoyment. And so we watched snow for one evening. I don't know if you've ever watched snow. Don't knock snow unless you've tried it, because snow is good. There's no commercials in snow, for one thing. There's no commercials to break up the monotony. I mean, the monotony of regular television is broken up by commercials, and, you know, you can sort of live with it. But the fact is, 3 hours of snow will drive you right out of your tree. And we were driven either to the music library or to the radio. Most of us weren't ready for the music library, and we tuned in the radio. And you had to be pretty good to do this, because it was a small town and with 2 little stations. They were 250-watt stations. Now, you hear your big stations, 50,000 watts of power, and that sounds so impressive. Well, these 250-watt stations were all we needed, I mean, in a town this small, and we had to be accurate to get them. Well, one was about 6 on the dial, and one's about 12. And the one that was 12 was just right across the street from the college. And it was really strange, because we tuned this thing in, and it was sort of a rock feeling, you know, and it gave us all kind of bad influences. But we got one thing out of college. I think everybody went to college for an education, nevertheless. So we came to this feeling, and this was the feeling that we all derive from our college and seminary training. When I was a lad, I went to school, and just to prove I was nobody's fool, I studied real hard, and furthermore, I polished up the apple for the professor. I polished up the apple so carefully that soon I had a Bachelor of Arts degree. When I finished college, I went to be a part-time student in the seminary. With an anxious heart and an empty head, I commuted back and forth and never went to bed. I slept so little, they rewarded me by giving me a bed in the infirmary. In church recreation, I excelled. In modern psychology, I rebelled. I worked as a grader and I tried to please, sharpening the pencils for the PhD. I sharpened all the pencils so pointedly that soon I was an expert in theology. Then the very next week I got a church, and up in an office I did perch. With folders full of seminary notes, I organized a program and began to promote. I promoted my program so fervently that the church split down the middle on account of me. Then another committee came inside, and they heard my sermons with delight. They invited me to come with substantial praise, which also included a substantial raise. I went, of course, with humility, 'cause that's the way you make it in the ministry. You know, now, as a minister and as a performer, I have a lot of opportunity to travel, and travel presents its own unique kind of problems to a person. For instance, if you don't like to fly, you have to fly anyway. I mean, there's not much choice when you have a long distance to travel. And my fear of travel was not enhanced by the fact that when I was in the line to buy insurance at one of the little insurance machines, there were two people in front of me, and this was the pilot and the co-pilot of the plane that I was going to take. And then there was one person standing around hollering, if God had intended for man to fly, he would have given him wings. And this was the co-pilot talking. And so if you have bad feelings already, you're in big trouble when you fly. But I've tried to summarize a little bit of my personal feelings about it. When I'm traveling by plane, whether business or vacation, how I dread the big ordeal that precedes my destination. For you drive out to the airport with a fear that you'll be late. Then you have to run another mile to reach your boarding gate, but that's the price you pay to fly. Wherever planes are found, you'll spend more time on the ground than you will in the air. When you're flying through the South, you will find the climate groovy, and I know that you'll enjoy your stereo and movie, but don't plan to fly direct. Even Howard Hughes and Santa cannot fly over Georgia without stopping in Atlanta. That's the price you pay to fly, so take it with a smile, then run another mile to board another plane. When it comes my time to die and I'm on my way to heaven, I'm so glad I won't be traveling on a 747. For I know that I'd be found with an attitude unwitty if my angel-driven chariot got fogged in Kansas City. But that's the price you pay to fly, and though it brings you pain, I guess we can't complain. It's safer than driving your car on the interstate freeway. It's a way to get downtown, and from 10 to 2 the traffic moves right along without a frown. The interstate freeway was designed to save us pain, and I guess it would if I only could get into a moving lane. The city traffic planner said that it looked good to him, but he should try to drive his car from 4 to 6 p.m. on the interstate freeway. It's divided and we're glad, yet some people right on the other side. It's enough to make you mad. A driver yelled, someone should tell the mayor just what to do. I said, go tell him for yourself, he's 3 cars back of you. But on the interstate freeway, you've a reason to discuss the promotions for you to leave your car and go downtown on the bus. Now, in the life of the church, as in every organization, you have your big seasons and your little seasons, the seasons that you really try to magnify, especially the season of Christmas. Now, we've got so much commercialization of Christmas already, and this is a real problem to all of us. But in our community, of course, even if you're in church, you've got to maintain status. And so the churches and the homes, even the ministers in the community, try to do their best to keep up with everybody else around Christmas time. Now, we have in our neighborhood a group called the Neighborhood Intimidation Society. They go to work about December 1st, and they get about 4 strings of lights, and they put them on their trees, and they are saying to the world, this is our Christmas decoration. And you say, hey, I can beat that. And so you go in and you get about 16 strings of lights, and you put them all over your house and your chimney and your car and anything else you can hang lights on, you hang lights on it, so you can outdo your neighbors. Well, this is great. And about the 17th or 18th of the month then, they go into their garage and they bring out a manger scene and a full-size Joseph and Mary, and they bring out a sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer, and they put it on their roof, and it looks horrible in your house, just devastating. So the only thing you can do is to do what we did, which is to do a living manger scene. Now, you got to have a big family to do this. But you get... Really, you get the living Joseph, the living Mary, you import donkeys from the country, you do all kind of weird things. The only people who really objected were our daughters, had to hang them in the trees for angels. And this presented kind of a problem. But the one thing Christmas is coming to mean to a lot of people now is big expense and big impressive yards. So I tried to capture the true spirit of Christmas in the 70s, I'm afraid, if we keep moving in this direction. I'll have a red Christmas, don't doubt it. I'm turning green just thinking about it. For when I went out shopping for my little girls and boys, I couldn't believe the price tags on all the Christmas toys. My son wants a train, an electric, he hollers. They only cost $300. I said, son, this is true, that's more than we paid for you. Now I'm in the red this Christmas. Did you see all my outside Christmas decorations? They weren't put there for my recreation. We were doing all right with our one Christmas tree, till we learned that the folks across the street were having 3. Now here's the whole fruit of my labors. We're shining brighter than any of the neighbors. And we're doing all right, both me and City Power and Light. But I'm in the red this Christmas. When you see trends like this in our society, it makes a Christian think, well, I've got to do something to involve myself. Now, one thing that you ought to do is to talk to yourself about it. Now, don't laugh when I say talk to yourself. I think most people here probably talk to themselves at one time or another. You may not admit it, but you do it. And I think that's good, because, for one thing, it's good to talk to somebody that's got some sense once in a while. But more than that, you need to verbalize things. Get things into your proper perspective, and you have to apply your faith to your life. Now, for a while, during my seminary training, I was a salesman, and I sold door-to-door cleaning products. And one of the products was a thing, you pour this on anything and it will clean it, no matter what. And you pour it on there and you can apply it with a stainless steel sponge. Well, one day I sold a bottle of the stuff, and I didn't sell the sponge, and next time around, the lady said it didn't work. And I said, well, you mean it didn't work? It always works. And I said, you just put it on there, rub it with that stainless steel sponge. And she said, what about the stainless steel sponge? And I said, well, you've got to have a stainless steel sponge to put it on. Now then, this occurred to me about this moment, and I went home and tried it. You could pour buttermilk on a dirty spot and rub it with a stainless steel sponge, and it'd come clean. The stainless steel sponge became the applicator by which anything works. Well, this pointed up a fact to me that we as Christians have got to get ourselves involved in society to the point that we can really say something and make our faith meaningful. And so this idea came to me as I was thinking about it. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. But only a man would cut it down and saw it to lumber and build him a town, build him a factory 8 stories tall, filling the air with pollution and all. But this is what we call progress. This is what we call civilization. It's killing the nation that reverently sings. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, which no one can see 'cause there's smoke in their eyes. Now God made all people both equal and free, in every nation, both sides of the sea. But some blinded women and angry old men still gauge a man's worth for the shade of his skin. And this is what we call progress. This is what we call civilization. It's killing the nation that reverently sings. Oh, beautiful for patriot's dream, which turned to a nightmare in our time, it seems. Now God made a man to live 70, maybe till 80 if he's lucky then, but with smoking and drinking and working too hard, he'll be dead before 50 and in the graveyard. And in the graveyard there might be a sign which might read, "This is what we call progress. This is what we call civilization. It's killing the nation that reverently sings. God shed his wonderful grace on thee, but judgment has come to the land of the free." Sometimes when we look at our world with all the troubles and problems, we might be ready to say there's no hope for the future. But in the Old Testament scriptures, there's a promise that we all can claim that might bring our nation together again. The human race is standing on the brink of suicide. We stay busy keeping count of how many have died. We're obsessed by death when there's hope to be found from the giver of life and of truth so profound. Here is a promise which we all can claim. God said, "If my people which are called by my name will humbly seek my face and turn from sin away, I will hear from heaven and I'll answer when they pray. And I'll forgive their sins, and I'll heal their land." Here is a promise on which we all can stand. There is hope for tomorrow if today we will stand. There is hope for our children in a God-fearing land. So take up the armor the Master calls for you. He will lead us to victory. His word is ever true. Here is a promise which we all can claim. God said, "If my people which are called by my name will humbly seek my face and turn from sin away, I will hear from heaven and I'll answer when they pray. And I'll forgive their sins, and I'll heal their land." Here is a promise on which we all can stand. Standing on the promises of Christ my King, through eternal ages let his praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing, standing on the promises of God.